Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Unfucking Your CX. I'm your host, Zack Hamilton. Everyone knows that. Quite frankly, you don't care. What you show up for is who is in the hot seat. And Michelle and I, really, we just met recently over LinkedIn, having conversations back and forth. There's been a few times where, Michelle, you have pushed back on me and said, Zack, you are out of your mind. And I love that. We've been able to debate that too. I think that's really, really healthy. But I think ultimately, you and I are cut from the same cloth when it comes to CX for the most part. Might have a little bit of differences. But Michelle, welcome to the hot seat.
Thanks, Zach. I appreciate it, and I appreciate you inviting me to be here today.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been one of those thoughts around, you know, not who's had the same like ideas and belief system, but bringing on those diverse kind of experiences. And you've had a ton of experiences all across your professional work. Just curious if you want to really kind of talk to me a little bit about how you got into CX and what kind of like stokes your passion about it.
Yeah. Well, I'll date myself a bit, but my roots really are from years and years and years ago. I worked for a professional tax and accounting software company. Actually, my first professional job. And I was there for about 15 years. And through my experience there, the company, it was so long ago that I don't even know if CX was really a thing yet in the professional space or the corporate world, certainly. But they really started to focus on what we probably didn't know at the time was the human centricity around our customers face on a day-to-day, or more importantly, not more importantly, but before that, our prospective customers. And at the time I worked in a pre-sales role, leading a team of sales engineers, and started to really be able to infuse and kind of build from scratch, I would say, a set of capability for that business to really focus on who their customers or prospective customers were and take more of a thought leader approach. I mean, these were terms that we used back then, right? And partnerships and all the things, which are all great, and really realized that I loved the human aspect of doing business and supporting prospective customers and customers. And so that's where I really got my roots. And then from there, took it into a career, actually at a different company for a number of years. But yeah, that's where it started for me.
That's amazing. I love how everyone is like, look, we didn't, or a lot of people that I've talked to, look, I didn't set out to be in customer experience. I ended up just doing customer experience by default, and kind of falling into it. Well, Michelle, before we get to this topic that makes you cringe and you want to unfuck, set the scene for us. Are we at your favorite coffee shop? Are we in a pub? Are we at a restaurant? Hell, are we taking a walk?
Oh, for sure we're at a pub. For sure we're at a pub. Yeah. With a few
Are
pints.
you beer or are you glass of
Well, it
wine?
depends. It depends on the mood. It depends on the mood. But I would say my go-to would be an ice cold pint of beer, for sure.
Oh, very nice. I just had a beer flight for one of the first times, like over the weekend. Like we went to this new local brewery, um, and they had so many brews on tap that they brewed themselves, and I was like, oh, it's so hard to pick one. So I got the flight. I drank 4 out of the 5. Are you dark or light? Dark or light?
Again, depends on the mood. I can go in either direction, but I would say today we're on the lighter side.
Lighter side?
We'll
Yeah,
keep it
yeah.
light, light and
Me
refreshing.
too. I'm very light. I'm very light as well. Well, Michelle, you've seen it all. You've been in the trenches yourself for many different companies. You've advised CX leaders as well. And I'm sure there's many topics that make you cringe, especially now when you hear them. But what's just the one that you want to unfuck today?
Yeah, I think in the business and corporate world, it really, and I sort of started the conversation with this. And you and I've had this debate on LinkedIn. Yes, we need to tie to metrics. Yes, we need to tie to business outcomes. Yes, all the things. That's what our C-suite cares deeply about. However, if you do not connect to the human aspect of what your customers are experiencing, you will be at a loss for not only really connecting to the priorities, but also how to resolve them. And so that for me is topic du jour and something that is core to my belief system.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. I know you and we've debated about this. I'm curious, can you give us an example of like this human side of it? So because everyone, we see a lot of like the human to human connection as like that buzz phrase that we see now. And even, when you see like customer centricity, everyone has so many different definitions, even for like the human connection. So how do you look at it? How do you define it? How do you think about it?
Yeah, I think, we're not at a shortage for caring about customers. People in business, I mean, that's sort of why they're there, right? I mean, they actually care from, a kind of heart and mind perspective and in their guts about their customers or prospective customers. And really, that's great. And that's where it starts. But you have to flip it into, okay, what do I do next about that? And how do I put that into use, right? Because caring isn't enough. You start there, but then what skills or practical things do I need to do in order to actually connect to who these customers are and what they need from my business or my team or me as an individual, whether it's big picture or in a specific moment. And so really building up those capabilities, I think, especially within businesses and not just large, but corporations, I think is so important and not something that a lot of companies are yet investing in. I think it's getting more, I'll call it popular, but things like service design and really kind of flipping in those signals of where you need to do better for your customers into actually doing better for them.
Yeah, I really appreciate and love how you're talking about this and thinking about it. I saw this quote from Nate Brown kind of in a message the other day. I had him on the show, and I think he was at a conference and said, "You have to care more about your customers' problems than you do your own." And I'm actually sided with that. Like I fully believe in the power of human connection. Like when I was thinking about my time as a store manager at Aaron's, I knew that if I wanted our customers just to have that incredible experience where one, they felt respected for coming into our stores, right? Because they were a demographic that a lot of brands don't even serve, like they won't serve them. I wanted them to feel connected and heard and seen. And I knew that if I did that or wanted that, sorry, then the employees who worked within the store had to feel the exact same way because they can't give what they don't have from that human emotion perspective.
That's right. Yeah. I think that's really key in terms of seeing your customers where they are and who they are. Um, and being also clear on who it is that you're serving. I think that's another thing that can get really gray and muddy for a lot of businesses. We want to serve everybody. We want to have everybody like that's great, except it's really hard to do. And getting that clarity and focus on who you're serving and then really getting to know them, right? As people, as individuals, as groups, as cultures, whatever the case is, so that you can really meet them where they're at. Whether it's at the strategy level and kind of big picture, how you want to serve, all the way down to those micro moments where you're actually one to one with a customer and you're trying to connect with them and help them in whatever way. It's not all negative all the time, right? But how you really connect to them and having those human connection kind of abilities. I mean, to me, it's the differentiator and really kind of elevates everything that is core, right? In terms of, okay, I care. Yes, we're customer centric. Now, how do we go about doing that? And it really flips it into doing versus just theorizing about it.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to dig into this so much further. I'm curious when you think, before we get into the player tips, when you think about this human connection element, of course, everything needs a measurement, right? Because there's that old school philosophy of if you can't measure it, you can't improve it, you can't focus on it. Everything has to have a score. So I'm curious, is there a score for human to human connection, or how do you really measure the progress that an organization is making?
Yeah. So, I mean, yes, there are sentiment scores and different frameworks that you can certainly utilize. I think for me, what I have found really works is first, the business has their core set of metrics. We'll call them our KPIs. If we're lucky, they have a good set of CX and a good set of business, or we help them get there, right? And I am not necessarily, how do I want to say it, like married to any one type of metric. I think the business needs to really decide what's important for them. Certainly, I'm there to help them identify that. The main players are always things like NPS and OSAT and customer satisfaction and these types of things. I like to look at things like customer effort. I like to look at things like issue resolution, just to kind of be complementary metrics there. We can have a debate about NPS on another. And then the business always has their set of business KPIs, right? What's important for them to measure based on the health of the business. And what I like to do is build the connection between them. And so whatever we establish there, I don't want 27 different metrics to manage. What are the few key ones that give us enough signal and we can build the connection between them and understand causation versus trying to like have one set here and one set here and manage them differently and do all the things. So really driving that causation between them, I think, is really key and something that can be done for different businesses, different niches, different industries, et cetera. Again, what you're measuring really, I think, depends on those things, and then building those connections between the two so that they're very connected and we can see not just the correlation, but the causation behind them. Really, I think, takes it to another level.
Yes, absolutely. I love the correlation versus causation because so many times, and I even did this when I was young in my CX career, where I would say, oh, wow, look, our NPS increased by 4 basis points. And oh my gosh, so did revenue.
Right.
And my CFO would be like, great, I hope this is true, but what specific actions did we take as an organization that caused both of them to increase in this specific time period? And I'm like, I don't know. Let me get back to you. And so I love how you say the causation versus correlation, because so many times we want to leverage correlation because we know it's just there, but it's really about that causation piece. That is so important. So let's get into the player tips. If you think about human connection and brands really need to focus on that human connection. I agree. Even in this digital world, like miss human to human connection. Like even in my Starbucks example on LinkedIn, just that
Perfect
connection.
example.
So, what's player tip number one? How should brands be shifting their mindset of, yes, we have to deliver shareholder value and everything into it, but we still can't diminish the power of human connection?
Yeah, I think it's what we talked about before. You have to get really clear on who your customers are and almost characterize or humanize them within the strategy of the business. Everybody in the business should be able to not only identify clearly who their customers are, but also talk about them as human beings. And there's, yes, personas and yes, archetypes and all the things, but that's for like, I don't know, that's a deeper level. Humanize them, put a face to them. Who are they? What characteristics do they have? You can create it in a simple way and then build narrative around that within the business. Again, they should be at the proverbial table when you're building strategy, when you're making decisions, when you're problem solving. Make sure that they're visually represented in a way also that helps everybody remember that they exist and then build that story around who they are. I think that that's tip number one for me.
I think that's an incredible tip. I think about now that I look back at what the organization built at Aaron's, one of the mandates from kind of the store support center, which was our corporate office, was everyone director level and above had to go work in a store one time. And that was part of it, was to sit face to face with those customers and really experience, like, one, who they are and listen to their story. But then two, it's also to think about everything that the tools and tech and everything that we keep pushing to the stores, does it hinder or help them to deliver that experience that we're trying to give? And there is such a power in that human to human connection. And I'm with you. They need to be visually represented. As we think about that seat at the table, Michelle, like just going deeper into this first player tip, I've yet to seen anyone just be given a seat at the table because we're the customer advocates. It's always about earning that seat at the table because you can translate customer into P&L. Is there a different way to earn a seat at the table in your mind?
Mm. Is there a different way to earn the seat at the table? I mean, I would love for there to be. I would love for it to just be inherent. And I don't think we're there yet, though. I don't think my honest answer is I don't know that we're there yet. And that's okay. That's okay. Because the reality is we can show the value. And so being given that opportunity first and is enough for me right now. Eventually, I do think, you know, the seat at the table becomes inherent with everybody else. I've dealt with this in projects. I've dealt with this, at the PMO level. I've dealt with it all across the business where you are still earning your space. Now, a lot more companies, of course, are becoming more customer centric and customer driven. And that's great from a strategic standpoint and an ambition standpoint. And it still we still have to earn because, sometimes we are still seen as the fluff and the extra and a cost center versus, a necessity within the business. And that's okay. I'm okay with that because my fight is strong and I'm so confident in the work and so confident in the value that you can bring it all day long.
Yeah.
We'll get there.
It's a progression. What's player tip number 2?
Let's see. I would say player tip number 2 is, again, building that connection and causation between what you're measuring in terms of business success. And sometimes you have to back into it, right? The business is going to have their KPI scorecard, whatever that looks like, and health looks like for them. And then you can back into what that causation is from a customer experience perspective. So if revenue is going up, down, and sideways, what is the result of that on the CX side? What are customers experiencing or not experiencing that's driving that? Are there things? Maybe, maybe not, right? Don't make causation or correlation if it doesn't exist. But I would say that is, it's probably tied for one, but first we have to get centered on who our customers are and know that we need to care about them and then figure out how to measure that for success.
Absolutely. You can't guess. 100% agree. I think the other piece of this too, when you think about correlation and causation, is it's not all negative friction.
Correct.
There's positive friction.
That's right.
And, the example being, hey, you might be running, a pilot in 100 stores, for example, and you're actually seeing a lot of positive feedback and friction and signals coming through of that experience that you're redesigning. It's working. And so to your point now, it's how do you take that and communicate the signal of, hey, this is working. We should expand what we're doing.
Yep.
It's not all about it's having a negative impact because there's so many things that organizations do so well. You just get lost in the negative impact.
I think that is really key too when you're in multi-regional businesses too. A lot of my experience comes in the global space and everybody likes to think that they're very different and their market is very different. And the reality is humans are humans and a lot is the same. And of course there's nuance, but that ability to scale what's going right, that's something we had a lot of conversation about at GMF because another market might be struggling with that or their customers might be struggling with that. And so the ability to really take best practices and scale, I think is super, super important. And so, yes, I like the reminder that not everything is bad. There's a lot of good stuff that goes on too.
Yeah. And look, I have to continuously remind myself, right? Because as a practitioner, I always want to just remove the blockers or frictions that are in the way. And then you get so fascinated. The hot seat doesn't want to let you go, Michelle, but what's player tip number 3?
Yeah, I think to kind of wrap all of this up, player tip number 3 is really have a set of core values around how you want to treat your customers. You can call them design principles, North Stars, whatever fancy term you want to use, but what is it that you're going to stay true to every time you resolve or design for customers or decision make for them so that you're reminding yourself constantly what you've committed to. things like simplicity, things like transparency, things like personalization, whatever it is, and whatever you've learned is important to your customer base, land on those few things, not 100 things, but a few things, and keep them ever present so that you can really stay true to those things. And you don't have to always remember up here, but they're really centered for everybody in the business.
I think that's one of the mic drop moments, right? Because especially as some leaders are fighting quarter to quarter just to keep their job, to your point, things change so much and you lose what you ultimately stand for as a brand and as a business. And in that, you lose your identity, not just for who you are, you stand for, but how do you serve
That's right.
those customers?
Yep.
Michelle, this has been such an incredible conversation. I almost just want to like stop and then play again so we um but some of our listeners, they probably want to pick your brain or go deeper. Where can they find you?
Sure. Well, I can be found on LinkedIn, so you can hit me up there. You can also email me at michellespiesscx@gmail.com, and I'd be happy to chat further with anybody.
I was gonna say, engage with her. She's fun and amazing to engage with on LinkedIn. Michelle, thank you again for coming to the hot seat. Don't be a stranger. Come back.
I appreciate it, and I will definitely come back.
Cheers.